Welcome to Fast Forward Media. I'm the creator Fox Albert, the creator of the Haunted Files, the Fast Forward Media stuff, and all the haunted things. For today, for your special Halloween, I will be having you to go and watch all the supernatural stories. This will be a 1 hour or maybe more than 1 hour video. So, let's start at Pontianak, at Sembawang. Food delivery rider. Let's go. It was a quiet night. Ring goes my phone. I receive an order. I am a delivery man working for Grab. I usually work till late night, roughly 1:45 a.m. But for today, I will be working overnight because of the merchant, which is open 24 hours. All this happened at around 3 a.m. When I unlocked my phone to see the order notification and details, I saw a delivery for a location which is nearby. The distance is roughly around 1.6 kilometers away, so I'm happy to send it. At first, I thought it is going to be an easy delivery, a fast one. The location I'm sending is a HDB block which has 2 elevator lobbies. So, knowing from experience that it has 2 elevator lobbies, I plan to take the second lobby, which is further back and nearer to the customer unit. So, I smoked a cigarette and waited for my order. I waited for 15 minutes until the order is ready. Now, the time is 3:13 a.m. I collected the food and placed it in my bag. The journey there was smooth and quiet as there is no one on the road as it is late at night. I've reached the block at 3:18 a.m. and I found myself at the first lift lobby, but as planned earlier, I wanted to go up through the second lift lobby. The block is very dark, but I don't really mind and try not to think much when I suddenly remembered stories about people seeing ghosts at the river behind this HDB block. The river behind the HDB block is deemed by the locals to be haunted. Not thinking much, I went to right behind the block, trying to find the lift, when suddenly I feel a cool breeze hit me. Not thinking much, I thought it was just the weather or the wind, when suddenly I smelled a floral fragrance similar to the frangipani flower. So, I played my music on my speaker louder and tried not to think much. I went to the first lift lobby and parked my bicycle and then went up the lift fast. While walking to the unit, I felt a strange atmosphere surrounding me, but I just continued to the unit. After I passed the food, I walked back to the lift lobby to take the elevator to go back down to where I parked my bicycle. While walking, I heard some footsteps and I ran towards the lift. When I reached the ground floor, I walked towards my bike when I noticed the same floral fragrance from earlier. A bit scared, I connected my phone to my speaker to play some music when I ride. So, I quickly got home and rode past the letterbox area. I noticed a strong odor and rode faster. Before leaving the area, I looked back to see a Pontianak with long hair, white dress, looking straight at me. At first, I can't believe what I'm seeing. So, I turned my head back again to check, is it really a Pontianak? When I turned my back, the Pontianak is still standing there, facing me. Knowing that's a ghost, I panicked and pressed my horn all the way till I reached the gantry of the car park. When at the gantry, I no longer see the Pontianak there, and I quickly go off. When I reached the merchant area, I told my friends about this story, and they were in shock. But a couple of them also have similar experience to me, seeing or sensing a Pontianak there. What do you guys think about this story? I won't tell the block number, but the location is somewhere in Sembawang. If you know it, please be careful. Isn't it very scary? The food delivery rider getting chased by a Pontianak coming out of the area. Let's go to our second episode, which is Kum Kum at a HDB. Let's go. During Hari Raya, we went out visiting our friends' houses. It's a common thing to do during this period, which is to visit houses and have fun. So, this story started when I visited one of my friends' houses. It was in the west. We were having fun as usual, eating treats which were prepared for us on the table and talking among us. At first, my friend's uncle seemed friendly, so I felt like there was no reason to feel uncomfortable. After a while, I noticed that he has been staring at me and muttering phrases silently under his breath. I ignored it and tried not to pay much attention as I continued talking and eating. At around 7:30, we decided to leave the house in order to continue visitations. As soon as I stepped out of the house, I felt a tremendous amount of pressure on my shoulders, almost as if there was something sitting there. I wasn't feeling too well afterwards, so I decided to go home early while my friends decided to continue their Hari Raya visitations. Once I reached my house, I felt depressed, not wanting to eat and talk to my family members. During that time, all I could think about was the face of my uncle's friend, but I couldn't figure out why. While I was cooped up in my room, my mother noticed something was wrong as I wasn't like my usual cheerful self. However, she just thought I was tired and decided to leave me alone so I could rest. I finally was able to sleep and I thought the weirdness would stop, but I was wrong. The next day, everything seemed normal until nighttime came, and that's when the feeling of dread came back. I told my mom about what happened the night before, and she offered to accompany me to sleep. But during midnight, I suddenly heard strange noises coming from the corridor. I tried to listen to identify what sound it was. It was chains being dragged on the floor. I was terrified and hoped it would stop, but I was so scared that I woke my mom up and asked her if she could hear the noises that I was hearing, but she said that she could not hear anything. The dragging noise abruptly ended and I couldn't sleep for the whole night. After what happened, I tried to forget it and fool my mind that it was just a coincidence. It almost worked, or so I thought. As night comes, I was sitting in my living room watching TV. It was approximately 10:30 and my front door was open. As I was watching TV, I was distracted by what had happened the previous nights before, so I do not have a feeling of fear at that time. I suddenly heard footsteps coming from the corridor of my house. I automatically assumed that it was one of my neighbors, so I did not pay much attention to the footsteps. After a few minutes, the sound of the footsteps stopped, but then I noticed in the corner of my eye, almost as if there was someone peeking at me from the corner of my door. I immediately had goosebumps, and I tried looking towards my door. However, there was nobody there. Suddenly, a totally black figure walked past my door, and I almost felt an instant wave of fear overcome me. It was almost as if the entity wanted to show itself to me. I slammed my door and ran to my mom's room with tears in my eyes and struggling to describe what happened. Once I could partially compose myself, I told my mom what exactly happened, and she decided that it was time to see a Muslim priest, also known as an imam. My mom wanted to see the imam on the night itself, so she called him and asked if he was able to help out at this time, which was already 11 o'clock. Thankfully, he said yes, and he told us to visit him right away. Once we reached the destination, I felt a surge of anger and disgust at the thought of going into the imam's house. I struggled and cursed at everyone who tried to restrain me. My brothers forcefully pushed me inside the imam's house. Once I was there, I was almost on autopilot, as I couldn't remember much of what happened. My mom told me that I was looking at the imam's face, seething with anger. The imam asked me questions like what happened and is there something inside of my body? I did not answer and continued to stare at him. He then asked my family members to leave the room as he is going to attempt to communicate with whatever is inside my body. After almost an hour, the imam asked my mom if I had visited any place that could be seen as dirty or haunted. My mom said no. Then the imam asked, where did I go before all this happened? My mom then said that I went visiting my friend's house during Hari Raya. The imam then said he was communicating with me and he found out there was a jinn that was sent to me. This jinn is said that it was from a master that practices traditional Malay dance, also known as kuda kepang. The way that kuda kepang works is that a spirit of a jinn possesses the dancers, which put them in a trance. Usually the people who teaches kuda kepang usually practices black magic and keeps a jinn. It then took a few more meetings with the imam to finally get rid of whatever that has been bothering me. He told me not to share any photos, especially with that particular friend whose uncle practices kuda kepang. It was an experience I will never forget. Kum Kum, a spirit and a ghost that has been very famous in the late 2010, 2013 in the east side of Singapore. So, let's go to our third episode, Pocong, at a Pasir chalet. Let's go. This incident happened to me a few years ago when I was having my holidays in June. It was the time of the year where poly students started to have their holidays. My classmate and I have a plan in mind to host a chalet in Pasir Ris for all of us to enjoy. We set the date to be somewhere around June and we planned it to be a 4-day chalet. We booked 2 rooms in that block and the rooms would be side by side with a door separating each room. So, the day came and we went to the chalet early to prepare. At first, everything seems normal, but then we saw a weird white pouch under the kitchen sink. Trying not to think much, we ignored it. After a while at the chalet, many of my friends came and they brought food and drinks. We had fun, talking and drinking, but it started to get late. So, for the first night, we stayed up late playing cards and watching TV. It was very noisy and crowded as there were more than 10 of them staying for the night, so nothing had happened. On the second day of the chalet, in the afternoon, a lot of my friends had gone home. There were only 2 couples and a friend of mine, who is a girl. We felt like an extra for being the third wheel in the group, but we all had fun together. Soon after, night came, and soon it was dark. For some strange reason, one of the rooms in the chalet felt extra cold, and the light seems to be very dim. We dismiss off this strange feeling with some jokes, but no one dares to sleep in that room. In the middle of the night, my friends and I were talking about haunted places. One of them brought up the red house, which is infamous for being haunted and is not far away from the chalet. We had a plan to go there, and we took our bikes and cycled there. The place looks run down since it's abandoned for a long time. When over there, nothing much had happened except one of my friends claimed he saw a pocong in the back of the house when we just reached there. When we got back to the chalet, my friend suddenly said he felt a weird aura around him and there was a smell in the chalet. We tried not to think much and continued with our plans. Then, it was around 3 a.m. A bunch of my friends already went to bed, but me and one of my friends who always stayed up late suddenly heard some sound as if there was someone jumping around downstairs. We ignored it and went straight to bed. The very next day, all went well and we all went out to have fun again. But soon, night fell. That night, we had nothing to do, so we watched some TV, and when it was around midnight, I decided to gather my friends to tell some ghost stories. My friend and I started saying ghost stories about this chalet area. All of us were scared, and we slowly moved closer, when suddenly, one of the girls said she heard some sounds from the first night. She explained she saw the figure when she was in the kitchen trying to take the drinks out from the fridge. But when she looked up again, it disappeared. After that, another one of my friends also said that during the night, their bed feels very squeezy, as if there was a lot of people sleeping on it. The story is very weird, and it caused a bunch of us to get goosebumps. So, it was getting late, and it's time to sleep. My friend and I went to get some water in the kitchen, and we were joking about the girl's story, saying it's fake and nonsense. So, after getting our drinks, we went to bed. While sleeping, I got awoken by some strange noise coming from downstairs, similar to the jumping noises I heard on the other day. I looked around to see who was awake, but everyone was asleep. So, being the brave guy, I slowly went down to see where the sound came from. And when I was at the stairs, I peeked by a wall only to see a pocong standing in the kitchen, hopping around. I was frozen for a moment, in shock. Then, I quickly ran in the room and hid under the blanket on the bed. Shivering in the bed, I managed to wake my friend up. She woke up rubbing her eyes and asking me, why do I sound so terrified? When she looked at me, she suddenly screamed, covering her eyes, saying that there was something behind me. My body is now covered with goosebumps, and I shouted loudly, trying to wake up my other friend, which is sleeping on the other bed not far from us. I managed to wake my other friend up, and they quickly asked what happened. At this point, my other friend, who shared the same bed as me, already has tears in her eyes and is already crying. I told my friend what happened, and they said we should all just stay awake the whole night so nothing bad happens. In the end, nothing much happened after that. But the girl who was with me caught a fever for 3 days and recovered from it. When we went back to school, I told the others, and they were very shocked to hear this. But, by the way, what could have led this spirit to our chalet? Was the chalet already cursed because of the small pouch we found under the sink? Or was it because of our adventure we had at the Red House? Till today, that night is a night I could not forget. Scary or not? Haha. Pocong at the Pasir chalet. That is one of the scariest stories that I've read. And that is about a pocong. You guys listen to it, alright? So, let's go to the next episode, which is Pontianak Ghost at Old Changi Hospital. Let's go. It was Friday, the night before. Me and my friend were texting each other, talking about what to do tomorrow. We were talking about how bored we are, when suddenly my friend came up with an idea about going to the Old Changi Hospital to thrill seek. After much planning, we were to meet each other in the late evening to have dinner before the adventure to the Old Changi Hospital. So, we agreed on the plan and invited another friend, so there were 3 of us, including me. The next day, we met at 7 p.m. in the evening at Changi Village. I was pretty excited the previous night when planning, so I brought my torchlights to meet them. As planned, we went to a nearby coffee shop to have our dinner, and by the time we finished our dinner, it was already 9:30 p.m. The dinner took longer because we had fun talking, eating, and enjoying ourselves. But what is going to happen at the Changi Hospital is something that is going to scare us for life. We reached the entrance of the hospital at around 10 p.m. Looking at the facade of the building already gave me chills down my spine. So, before we entered, we looked at each other for a final confirmation that we are going into this abandoned hospital. When we were in there, I gave each one of my friends torchlight for them to see because it was so dark. We started walking around the hospital and remember from an article that we read online that there was a mortuary in the hospital which has a lot of stories. So, we continued walking towards the mortuary. While walking, we heard sounds of girl crying. The funny thing is we 3 are the only ones in the hospital, so we knew what we're hearing is something paranormal, and it was scary. I looked at my friend to see if he heard a girl crying in the background, and he told me that he heard the same exact thing as me. Scared, we tried to find the source of the sound, and the source of the sound led us to one of the wards in the hospital. When we were in there, we saw nothing. It was just empty. Puzzled, one of my friends said that we should just continue our journey towards the mortuary. So, we got out and continued our journey. Then, we finally found the mortuary area. Before we entered the mortuary, one of my friends looked very scared. His face turned pale and he was shivering. Suddenly, he reached out his finger and pointed towards the doorway. He keeps saying there's a lady in white behind the doorways. Then we turned to look at the doorway and there was nothing there. But looking at my friend in that state made us feel scared. Suddenly, he started running down the hallway, passing by all the wards, shouting Pontianak. We chased after him, and in the background while chasing him, we heard a feminine laughter which resembles a Pontianak. When we finally caught up with him, we asked him to chill, and at that point, his face was pale and he looked like he was going to faint. We told him, let's go back in again. He resisted and said that the thing he saw looked very angry and flew towards him, which resulted in him running away. After the commotion, we finally got him to follow us into one of the hospital wards where we explored and tried to look for things that seem unusual. While exploring, I noticed one of my friends staring at me. I thought, what was his problem? But upon closer look, I realized that he was not staring at me, but he was staring at something behind me. I asked him, what happened? He did not reply, but gave me a frozen blank look. At that point, I realized that he saw something scary behind me. So to get him out of the trance, I pushed him and he suddenly shouted while pointing at the doorway behind me. I knew that we needed to get out of that area fast because we are not welcome. Suddenly, a sweet floral fragrance similar that of the frangipani flower entered the room. The smell was so strong and all of us got scared. Suddenly, the floral fragrance turned into a rotten smell, and remembering from what I read online is when the floral smell turns into a rotten smell, it means the Pontianak is near. We all looked around, back to back, scared, pointing our torchlights to every part of the room to see if there was anything unusual, when suddenly one of my friends pointed his torchlight towards the window and screams. When we all looked at the window, what we all saw was a Pontianak floating there and looking at us. We all quickly ran out of the ward, down the corridor and towards the entrance. While running, we all heard the same feminine laughter from before. Not turning back, we all ran all the way until we were out of the compound. When we were outside, we all slowed down and asked each other what we saw. We explained to each other that we saw the Pontianak at the window. Scared and still feeling creeped out, we all took a taxi back towards the coffee shop and tried to keep ourselves calm over there by drinking some tea. Till today, this memory of the three of us exploring Old Changi Hospital will be a memory I could not forget.
Hey, focus. Okay. So, isn't it scary? The Pontianak chased him in the Old Changi Hospital. So, what would you guys do if you're in this situation? This year's Halloween only for Halloween. Okay? So, let's go to the next ghost story. The Pontianak and Neo Cheo Estate. Let's go.
And the Neo Cheo Estate. I asked them about the Neo Cheo Estate as I have never heard of that place before. One of my friends said that it is an abandoned HDB estate in Singapore. He said that that place was extremely haunted as it has been abandoned for decades. I then asked if any of them have been there before. One of them answered yes. He described his experience at the site as feeling a sense of fear and horror, and he heard strange noises coming from the levels above. At that time, I was the thrill seeker and an adventurer, and I asked what if we went there now? Would they be brave enough? Half of my friends got excited at the idea, and the other half started to worry. We finally decided to head there with our motorcycles and see if it is really haunted as they say it is. It was around 11 p.m. when we started to depart from the coffee shop and head for the abandoned estate. I was very excited and a little fearful. When we reached the entrance of the abandoned estate, we were immediately greeted by overgrown grass covering the bottom of the estate. It was clear that no one has been there for a long time. We then slowly ventured into the void decks of the estate. The place was extremely dark with almost nothing lighting our path except for the gloomy moonlight. As we were walking, we started to see the various graffitis covering the walls of the estate. We then came across a door. We debated on whether we were brave enough to do it, fearing what might be on the other side. I then gathered my courage to open the door. As soon as the door was open, a rotting smell flew towards me. All of us could smell it. It smelled almost as if there has been something decomposing in there, and the smell has been contained until I opened the door. I almost vomited from the stench, but none of us said anything. I remember that old folks used to say that if there's something supernatural happening, the best thing to do is ignore it, and so we did. We continued to walk and explore the place. We decided to take a break under the void deck of the estate. Well, Neotio Estate wasn't a tall building. It was just a few levels high. So, during the times when we were talking, there were awkward silences. And during those awkward silences, we could hear stuff like glass breaking and falling. It would stop for a while, but then it would continue again. My eyes then were shifting to see if I could spot anything unusual. I wish I didn't done that. Far away from the void deck, I noticed something flying from one tree to another. When I saw it, I immediately shut my eyes and uttered prayers. My friend asked me why, what was wrong, and I said that I think we should leave this area. We then decided to depart from the place and head back to the coffee shop, which was open 24 hours. I then told my friends what I had seen, and they said that these kind of places are usually haunted because they have been abandoned for a really long time. After a few hours at the coffee shop, the feeling of fear had passed. I felt tired and I wanted to head home earlier. One of my friends then asked me if I really want to head home first. I said that a few hours have passed and I think it is going to be fine. So I left. The time was almost 3:30 a.m. I had to ride my bike along these quiet roads. The ride to my house was a bit strange as I felt like there was extra weight on the back of my motorcycle. The weight felt like as if there was someone behind me. I tried my hardest to ignore it, but there was no denying that I got goosebumps all the way home. I quickly parked my bike and walked towards the lift. The feeling of fear came over me again as I felt as if there was someone behind me. Then I thought maybe it's just me overthinking and I'm just scaring myself for nothing. As I approached my house, everything went normally. I went inside, took a shower, and went to bed. Every night, I sleep with the windows open as the aircon in my room was damaged. When I'm in the house, I thought that I was safe, but I was wrong. My eyes suddenly glanced towards the open window, and I saw a figure crouching on the air conditioner vent outside my window. The figure was staring at me with an extremely wide eyes and gaping mouth. The fear I felt at that time was almost indescribable. Then I quickly ran to the door of my room and shut it immediately. I spent the night in my living room, unable to forget the horrifying face that I have seen. The next day, I reached out to my dad and told him what happened the night before. He then asked his friends to come to the house to conduct prayers, and my dad's friend, who was a specialist in dealing with the supernatural, then conduct a cleansing of the house so that nothing could come in. He said that this wasn't a guarantee that the house is safe, because if the spirits enter the house, it would be harder to get rid of it. He asked me if I could explain what exactly happened, so I did. He said that the spirit that I saw that night was a Pontianak, and we were disturbing her area when we were exploring. Till today, I will never forget this experience, and thankfully, that night was the last time I saw the Pontianak. And now, I will always avoid going to haunted or abandoned places. For now, I would always close my windows and curtains fully before I sleep, hoping to not see any supernatural things outside my window.
Hello. Okay, so the Pontianak New Year's Day, very scary, something out of the ordinary. And that is a very abandoned place. It's a scary place if you guys didn't know where is Neo Teo Estate. It's somewhere around Lim Chu Kang. So let's go to the next ghost story, which is ghosts at Singapore General Hospital. Let's go.
I started out my night shift as usual. I had to go to my ward to check if the patients are asleep or if they need anything. I went into a separate ward to check. This room was almost empty except for an old man sleeping in the corner. He seemed to be fast asleep and everything seems okay until about 3:35 a.m. I then suddenly heard a faint laughter from outside the room. It was very faint, but I was almost certain it was from a child. The level that I'm working in doesn't take in children, and we do not have facilities in here to treat them. I instantly had goosebumps, and even though I couldn't hear it properly, I could guarantee that it was a child. It came to an abrupt end, and I assumed it was over. I went out to the hallway located outside the wards, when suddenly the laughter was heard again, but this time there was also sound of footsteps that almost seemed as if it was running around. After hearing that, I got scared and I ran to the opposite side of the hallway out of fear, and I bumped into a colleague of mine. I then asked her where she was heading, and she said she is going down to a convenience shop located below. I then followed her down. In the lift, she asked me what was wrong, as I was noticeably breathing very fast. I told her that I heard a child's laughter outside the wards, and she told me that the wards used to house child patients a long time ago, so maybe that's what I heard. For the remainder of my shift, some patients were starting to gradually wake up as it is already 5:30 a.m., so the feeling of fear gradually disappeared. A few months has passed since then, and I was put on night shift again. Everything seems normal. Patients were getting ready to sleep, and I had to see if everything was fine. During that time, the toilet that was near my ward was closed due to construction. So each time I had to go to the toilet, I had to take the longer route to a more secluded toilet. I always have gone there during the day, and it seemed relatively normal. But then, during the night time, however, it was a different story. The time was 2 a.m. in the morning, and I felt like I had to go to the toilet to freshen up as I was feeling a little sleepy. The journey there already gave me chills as it was very dimly lit and there was no one around. It almost felt as if there was someone behind me, but I decided to ignore it, thinking it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I finally reached the toilet, but the feeling of something following me and watching me was still present. I was washing my face and hands in the sink when suddenly I heard a deep voice growling behind my ear, and the cubicle door suddenly slammed shut. I quickly ran out of the toilet out of fear, but one thing I know is that usually nurses don't go to this particular toilet at night, as it was supposedly haunted, and I learned that the hard way. So this last story happened recently, and it happened around early this year. I had a patient in my ward who was a makcik in her 70s. She is always really cheerful and friendly towards all the nurses. She seems to me like a religious person with a prayer cap on her head at all times. Then, one night, I was on my night shift and I went into my ward. I was expecting to see the makcik sleeping, but instead, she was sitting on the bed. She wasn't wearing her prayer cap, and her hair was very messy. Her eyes were shifting from corner to corner, and she was mumbling things under her breath. This sent chills down my spine as I thought, how could a lovely old woman behave so differently within a night? I then told one of my colleagues to accompany me as she was acting very strange. My friend reached her hand out to check if the makcik is okay, and the makcik launched towards her almost as if she wanted to attack. I had a suspicion that night that maybe the makcik has been possessed. I tried to call a staff nurse to help us with this, but everyone was busy, so we had to wait it out. Subo then came at about 5 plus in the morning, and we went to check on the makcik. So, when we entered the ward to check on her, she was peacefully sleeping. The next day, she was acting normal right until her discharge, but I could never forget that night, as I did not know if she was possessed or something else happened entirely.
Hospitals is something that keeps me awake at night, and I am very scared to be at the hospital. Being a ghost hunter, I am quite easily able to see all these paranormal things. So, maybe that's one of the reasons why I created ghost hunting. But hospitals still give me the creeps. It still gives me the creeps because there's always a sense of dead people. So, let's go to our next video, which is Ghosts at Old Upper Thompson Road. Let's go.
The time was 2:15 a.m. I have just picked up a passenger from the Bedok area, and he told me he was heading towards Upper Pierce Reservoir Park. Throughout the journey, I was talking with him, asking him what he's doing over there at the time of the night. He told me he is going over there to meet his friends who was already over there chilling and waiting for him. Not thinking much, I continued my journey and we finally reached the destination. I told him to enjoy himself and have fun. So, after sending him to Upper Pierce Reservoir, I went back out towards the old Upper Thompson Road, when suddenly, towards the entrance of the small little road that leads to the reservoir, what they call the Devil's Bend, I saw a lady who was standing beside the road and she was flagging my taxi. I stopped for her and asked where is she going. She told me she's heading towards the west area, somewhere around near Teo Estate and Lim Chu Kang Road. So, I took her in just because I was planning that to be my last trip of the night, since I stay in Jurong also. Throughout the journey, the lady never really talked much. She was just sitting in the back seat facing straight. When we reached Lim Chu Kang Road, I asked again, where do you want me to stop? She said, further ahead. When I asked again, "Is it here?" she told me it's still further ahead. After a few minutes, we finally reached an area near the cemetery called Pusara Aman. She told me to stop, and I asked if this place was okay. She said yes, and she paid me the taxi fare and walked out of my taxi, walking straight into the cemetery. After she left my taxi, I stayed there while looking at the lady walking into the cemetery. I wonder if it's a bit weird she asked me to stop here, but it's none of my business, and I continued my journey down Jalan Bahar on my way to Jurong. While driving along Jalan Bahar, I suddenly smelled a very strong flowery smell in my taxi, so I wind down my windows to let the smell out of my taxi. After I opened the windows, I looked at my rearview mirror and I was shocked because I saw the same lady in my taxi. I slammed my brakes and stopped at the side of the road. When I turned back, there was no one at the back, so I think maybe it was just me because I didn't sleep much. I continued my journey home. While driving, I suddenly hear a girl humming coming from the back of my taxi. I look at the rearview mirror once again, and there was nothing there, but the humming sound that came from the rear of my taxi was very clear, and I was sure it wasn't anything else. I just ignored it and continued my journey. When I reached the car park, I went in the car park to park my car. After closing my car door, I walked in front to look back at my taxi, and I realized the passenger light was on. So I went back to unlock my taxi and turn off the light. After I closed the door again, I walked towards the lift lobby and looked back at my taxi. Once again, the passenger light was on again. So I went back into my taxi one more time to turn off the light. After closing the door again, I suddenly glanced at the back seat of my taxi and got terrified when I saw a lady in white with long hair at the back of my taxi. I quickly locked the taxi and ran straight towards the lift lobby. While running, I smelled the same floral fragrance that I smelled in the taxi just now. I pressed the button to call the lift. When the lift arrived, I quickly entered and pressed my floor and closed the door. When the door is about to close, it suddenly opened back. I pressed the button again to close it, and when it was like a jar, it opened back. So I pressed the button one last time and forced the lift door to close with my hands. Finally, the lift door closed. When I reached my floor, I quickly ran towards my house and unlocked my gate. I entered my house and quickly closed the door and locked it. I finally felt a sense of relief. I took out my shoes and I walked towards the kitchen when suddenly I heard my house door being knocked aggressively. I was terrified, so I waited for it to stop. After the banging stopped, I went to the door and looked through the peephole. What I saw in the peephole was the same lady in the car, so I got shocked and fell to the floor. And the banging continues. At that time, I was so scared as I could hear the entity banging my door and calling my name. After a while, I could hear a lady outside my door laughing, and I got so scared I went into my room and woke my wife up. She asked me what happened, and I told her something is at the front door. So she accompanied me towards the front door and recited prayers together. After reciting prayers, there was no laughing sound or begging noise anymore. So I went to shower and went to sleep. Till this day, I can still remember the lady's face as it was terrifying.
What about the story? It is very scary. Ghost at Old Upper Thomson Road. Old Upper Thomson Road is a place in Singapore. It used to be a driving circuit, but after that it changed into a normal road. A lot of people have died on that road, and there's always stories of Pontianak or some lady with her child carrying in her arms, you know? So let's go to the next video.
It was a fun day. I went out with my wife and kid to enjoy ourselves at Sentosa. After our outing, we planned for another vacation to Malaysia, Genting. So we confirmed the dates to be somewhere around December. Me, my wife and kids agree on the date. So the date came in December. We packed our bags, took our belongings and placed them in the car. We had to wait at Woodlands to pass through the checkpoints, and soon after, we were already in Malaysia. So it was quite a long ride towards Genting. It took us a few hours to reach the destination, and the car ride was fun. It was like a road trip. We sang songs in the car, had pit stops, and soon after, we reached Genting. Upon reaching Genting, we parked the car and checked into the hotel room. The process took fast, so we went up the lift and went to our room door. As always, I will knock the door before entering to show a sign of respect to the unseen. When I opened the room door, I suddenly felt a gust of wind hit me, but I didn't think much because maybe it's just the air pressure. When I entered the room looked amazing, but there was a strong smell of flower. I thought maybe it was just the hotel perfume, so I ignored it. For the daytime, everything was fine. We went out to the theme park to enjoy ourselves and went back to the hotel to take a rest. But then, night fell, so during the night, everything was okay until the time was roughly around 12 midnight. At around 12 midnight, while lying down on my bed, I suddenly hear a knocking sound coming from the next room. I ignored it because the knocking sound wasn't so loud, and soon after we all fell asleep. For the second day, everything was great. We went out to enjoy ourselves, get some food, go to the theme park, and spend some more time together. But then, on the second night at around the same timing, 12 midnight, the sound started to come back, but now more aggressive. It sounds like someone is banging hard on the wall. Even my wife and children can hear it, and they got shocked. So, I called the room service to check what was happening in the next room because it's late at night and we're trying to sleep. When the security arrived at my room, the banging noise had stopped. The security asked me, which room was it from? I told him, the room on the right, which is beside mine, and he told me he will go check on it. I went back to bed, just lying down, watching TV, and suddenly my room door was knocked. I opened it, and the security told me there was nothing in the next door room, so everything should be fine. When looking at the security, I can see a sense of fear, but he carried on telling me that nothing was wrong. So, after the security left, it was quiet and there was no banging. But when the time was roughly 2:15 in the morning, the noises started to come back. I got so agitated and angry, I called the front desk again. I told them that this is ridiculous, that it is in the middle of the night, and there are sounds coming from the people banging on the walls. Soon after, the security went up again, and he could hear the banging noise also. So, he went next door to check if there's anyone in the room. He called the front desk to check if there's anyone staying in the next room next to mine, and the front desk replied saying that there was no one staying next door. The security started to look scared, and he told me everything will be fine. Me and the security continued talking and the noise kept coming back. He tried to put his ear on the wall to listen. When listening to the sound, he can hear loud banging noise as if it was coming from the room next door. So, he uses his key card to enter the room next door. When he is in the room next door, the sound doesn't sound like it's coming from the room, he said, but it sounds like it was coming from my room. A bit confused, he came back out of the room and went back into my room to check where was the sound coming from. After trying to check, he called back to the front desk and told the front desk what happened upstairs, and soon after, the front desk called my room phone. The front desk lady asked me if I wanted to change my room. From the voice of the front desk lady, she sounds a bit worried and frightened. So I said yes, I would like to change my room. We packed our items and went down to the lobby. On the way out of the room with our bags, I suddenly saw a lady in white near our bed. Creeped out, I slammed the door shut and went down. At the lobby, I asked the lady who called me what's wrong with the room. She said there's nothing wrong there, only sometimes there's sound leakage from somewhere. I said okay, and I was thinking, what sound leakage does she mean? Cause what could possibly make that sound at the time of the night? After waiting for 5 minutes, the lady gave me the new key for the room. This time, the room was perfect and there was no disturbance. After the holiday, when I'm at home, I opened my laptop and searched for the room number in the hotel. What popped up shocked me, as there was news of a woman committing suicide in that room. There is also a bunch of people sharing their paranormal experience in that room. Till today, I still don't understand what happened that night.
So, Genting Highlands. It's one of the most scariest places in Malaysia. This is one of the stories from Genting Highlands. That is really scary. So, hope you guys enjoyed that story. So let's go to another ghost story, which is Pontianak at Pasir, Sungei Api-Api. Let's go. It was roughly around 2 a.m. My friends and I have already met each other at Pasir Central. We were with our fishing rods and boxes to prepare to fish later. The plan was to fish at Sungei Api-Api. So, we bought some drinks first at the 7-Eleven, then hopped on our motos to ride towards the river. The ride was not long as it only took around 3 minutes. We found a place to park near the river and unload our items. By the time, it was already 2:30 a.m. While walking towards the river, I just noticed how dark the place is and how quiet the night is over there. For some reason, some of the lampposts was not working that night, so it was hard to see. But luckily, we all came prepared. We brought our torchlights. We set up our place to chill with our camping chairs, snacks and drinks. Once all is set up, we start fishing. While fishing, everything was great. I caught around 2 fish, my friend caught some also. We placed the fish in the styrofoam box we bought. After catching a few more, we took a break. We all sat on the chairs and had a chit-chat. After a while, one of my friends suddenly brought up the topic of ghosts in this area. He said that there is a lot of stories of people fishing at night and they encounter a ghost. The ghost, he said, was the infamous Pontianak. We quickly asked him to stop talking nonsense, and I said let's continue fishing. So, we all threw our lines back in the water and waited for the fishes. After a few good catches, we all continued talking and fishing when we suddenly heard an owl sound. The sound was a bit weird. It sounded a bit like an owl and like a girl. I asked my friend if you guys heard the sounds. They said yes.
and they explained that they heard the same sound. Feeling a bit weird, one of my friends suddenly said, "Guys, maybe it's the Pontianak, huh?" He said jokingly. We all told him to keep quiet and don't say anything stupid, fearing that the ghost might come. So, we all ignored it and continued fishing. While fishing, I caught a fish, so I reeled it up to take it off the fishing line. While bringing the fish to the box, I suddenly see the box half open. I wonder who opened the box, so I put the fish in and counted them, when suddenly I realized 2 of the fish were missing, as there was supposed to be 6. Weird out, I asked my friend if he took the fish out. He said no and asked me why. I told him exactly what happened, and he said none of them took my fish. While talking about this weird encounter, we all heard the same owl, but this time, it sounded more like a girl crying. We all took our torchlight and pointed it on the trees to see if there's anything there. Suddenly, we heard the sound of the boxes move. We panicked and moved back together while pointing our light on the box. When we all got enough courage, we walked towards the box and see that there's 1 more fish missing and there was blood in the water. Shocked, we all started to pack our items, saying there's something over here disturbing us, when suddenly we heard a laughing sound coming from a distance. Scared, we all took our torchlights and pointed everywhere, when suddenly one of my friends pointed it at the tree. We all were shocked to see a Pontianak on top of the tree with her dress smeared in blood. She suddenly flew towards another tree and we all panicked and ran. We took our rods, camping chairs and ran as fast as we could. While running, we can hear the Pontianak laughing. We quickly head towards the car park and talk to each other, asking each other if what they saw was in sync with me. They said yes, they saw the Pontianak on the tree and the thing was laughing at us. While talking, we think maybe the Pontianak was the one who ate my fish. After a while, we realized the boxes that we brought for keeping our fish were still at the river. I asked my friend if we could go get it. They all said no, because everyone was too scared. Till today, I would not fish at that river at night because of the terrifying experience.
Since young, I've been staying in the east side, and there's always stories about Sungei Api-Api being haunted. I'm not sure if I have ever seen anything over there, but there's always stories of people who fishing at Sungei Api-Api and after that seeing a Pontianak or pocong or anything, you know what I mean, correct? So, that is the story for Sungei Api-Api. So let's go to the next episode, which is Nenek Keropok Home Encounter. Let's go.
I stay in the east, and there was a time there was a rumor about an old lady selling crackers at night called Nenek Keropok. This story happened to me a long time ago. Everything was normal every day. I came back from school, showered, studied, played games. Sometimes I come back home late from school to play soccer with my friends. But it was this particular evening when it all started. I was at home alone in the living room watching TV and munching on some snacks, when suddenly I heard someone knocking on my door and greeting. I opened the door and replied, thinking maybe it's my mother's friend, as she sometimes dropped by asking me where is my mother. But when I opened the door, I was a bit shocked to see an old lady in front of my front door, wearing full black and a headscarf, also carrying some keropok. The lady asked if I would like to buy some keropok. Her voice was quite raspy and she looked a bit weird. I kindly declined and she said, help her purchase some. I said no, I don't want it. Suddenly, she asked me, how about your friend behind you? Does she want it? I said, what friend? As I'm at home alone. She suddenly laughed a bit and mumbled something under her breath. I quickly slammed the door shut and made my way back to the sofa to chill and watch my TV. My parents usually come back at around 11 p.m, but it's still a long way as the time was only 7:20 p.m. in the evening. At that point, I already have chills down my spine, thinking about the old lady saying that I had a friend behind me. While sitting on the sofa and my thoughts getting carried away, thinking about the encounter with the nenek keropok, I suddenly heard sounds of footsteps walking behind me towards the kitchen. A bit frightened, I tried my best to ignore it and continued watching the TV. Suddenly, sounds of people knocking on my door can be heard. So, I stood up and walked towards my door and opened it. What's terrifying is that no one was there, but a very strong cold breeze hit me. I quickly closed the door shut, and when I turned around, I heard sounds of girl crying coming from the kitchen. Very scared now, I walked slowly towards the living room and peeked towards the kitchen. It was dark in the kitchen as I did not turn on the lights. I slowly creeped towards the kitchen to turn on the lights just to see. There was nothing there. Thinking it was my mind playing tricks on me, I turned off the lights and made my way out of the kitchen just to hear sounds of girl humming now, but coming from the living room. When I turned out of the kitchen, I saw a lady in white with long black hair standing behind the living room curtain. I screamed, and with my heartbeat racing fast, I ran towards my room and shut the door, locking it instantly. While on my bed, I hear banging on my room door. It was insane, as if the banging was hard and loud. Suddenly, I hear the entity calling out my name. Followed by a laughter. I called my mom on my phone, crying, telling her what happened. She said she will send my auntie to come over. After a while, my auntie came over. I was with my auntie the whole night until my parents came back and I told them everything. On the next day, everything was fine, but the following day, which is a Thursday, there is a disturbance again. But this time, everyone was home, so I was in my room and there was banging on the house door. This time, my mom went to open the door just to see no one again. I went out to see where the sounds was coming from with my mom. What we saw was the same Pontianak at the window, knocking the glass and laughing. I screamed and closed my eyes. And my dad came out of the room soon, just to see all of us in a terrified state. The night itself, my father called an ustad, which is a Muslim priest. The ustad said there was a Pontianak in the house, and he tried his best to ask the entity to get out of the house. He said the ustads recommend us to pray frequently so that it is not easy for the entity to enter the house. Up to this day, I will forever remember the haunting experience with the nenek keropok. I should have not opened the door.
So, nenek keropok, another one of the most famous ghost stories. So, all the other supernatural stories is all the specials, interview, the UXM videos, and all the good stuff. So, there's one more normal supernatural stories, which is the stories from our viewers, that is you guys.
The stories are Pocong at the playground and Pontianak at the highway. Sensei Crazy and I forget one more guy. But after that, those people, thank you for sending your stories. Have a listen. Today, we will be telling 2 ghost stories from our viewers as an appreciation to what our viewers have to share to us. And if you have your own stories, please share with us in the comment section below. Thank you. So, the first story is from Sensei Crazy. This story happened to my uncle when he was young. One night, he was playing at the playground. While playing at the playground, enjoying himself, he then saw 3 pochongs. One was bending to the side, one was hopping around, and one was standing there. Spooked, he then rushed back to my great-grandma's place, and he was crying after seeing those scary entities. When he reached my great-grandma's place, he told her what happened, and my grandma told him to pray now. But the story did not end there. As my uncle was praying, he heard knocking sounds on the shed roof, and after a while, the sound stopped and the pochongs disappeared. What a scary story, guys. From Sensei Crazy. Thank you very much for sharing your stories in the comment section below. So, the second story is from Robert, and it is from the comments. The story starts here. What I've seen sends unimaginable chills down your spine. Not that it shows hideous face or appearances, as it was too dark to discern its features. I was passing a pitch-dark expressway due to an outage. I noticed my car lights were dim, and I thought it was strange, but I still continued driving. After a while, I saw something at the curb of the highway, so I drove by it and stopped to check my lights. The distance between me and the thing was approximately 30 to 40 yards. When I stopped the car after climbing a slight road incline, I checked the engine and it was still running and the lights were still on. So, I opened my door and right smack into my nostrils was the scent of the bunga cempaka. I immediately reacted by uttering dirty and spat on the ground. I walked to the front of my vehicle and checked the lights. I found them to be in perfect order, and I immediately went into my car and drove on. I was slightly apprehensive but felt no fear, and it was around 3:15 a.m. in the morning. But nothing strange happened as I resumed my journey onward home. The spectre I saw was a lady standing at the curbside of the highway, staring into the pitch darkness as there was an outage. No lady would in mind stand alone in inky blackness staring out into space by herself. She was in white with her attire flowing right down to its ankles as I saw her when I turned a slight bend and my nightlight shone upon her bright as day. Having crossed the highway and up the inclined slope was when I noticed my car lights went dim and I stopped to inspect it. My experience wasn't at all scary, and somehow fear didn't overwhelm me. However, I have another story about a friend of mine. He said he saw a Pontianak sitting on the cotton bud tree, naked, making sounds like psst, psst. And when he looked up the tree, he saw the entity there waving her hand and beckoning him to come towards her. He banged the windows of the mother's bedroom, screaming for the mother to open up. That was the most frightening experience for any man. The place where the Pontianak sat atop the cotton bud tree was in Jalan Kembangan, opposite Frankie Estate, or I should say Frankel, off Changi Road. Now, that was something scary I experienced as I was just 16 years of age at that point in time.
So thank you for listening to Supernatural Stories on our special Halloween day. As you can see me, and my hair is very messy. So, what do you guys think of the stories, and what do you guys want next? What stories do you find that is pretty scary and something that could be, enjoyed by the viewer? If you have that story which you think people will enjoy, or a story you would like to share as your own supernatural story, please do send us an email at spooksffm@gmail.com. There will be emails in the bottom section below the description, and after that you can also leave your story in the comment section below. Every story shall be listened. We will always review it, we will always make it better, and we would always want to share your own paranormal experience, because what we believe is these videos are your stories, are your videos to enjoy. So, thank you for watching Supernatural Stories. Good night. It's Batman. Good night. Good night. That's a wrap. Hope you guys have a very enjoyable Halloween, and good day or good night where you at. Good night. Maybe for us, because that's their voice. Okay. Also, wait. If you guys feel that one, you can watch Fast Forward Media, The Haunted Files, which is at Labrador Park. We did a ghost hunt there. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Good night. This is Labrador Park. This place is also known as Fort Pasir, and this place is famous for its haunting history in World War II. Underground ammunition storage and tunnels that connects to different parts of the fort. Is there anybody over here who can talk to us? And also one orb going towards me, followed by another scream. You hear that?
Oh, that's that.
So if this thing
What the fuck was that? You hear that? Okay.
Oh, there, right?
What the fuck? Record.
So is there anyone here? You can come to this thing and spike it up. Make it go to no.
Cannot.
I just told it to come over here, and it just said cannot.